Fear is an emotion that seems to be almost universal, so it's experienced across a whole range of different cultures and even in other animals such as chimpanzees. It's basically the name we give to our interpretation of biological changes. So when we experience fear, it's as a result of perhaps our blood being diverted away from our digestive organs in order to flow towards parts of the body that will enable us to fight or to flee. And that's the sensation of having butterflies in your stomach. There are two main categories of fear. Some fears are innate, which means that we're born with these, and we all tend to share these same fears. And some of the common innate fears are a fear of death and a fear of snakes. And there's an obvious reason why we'd want to avoid these things. The second category of fears we call acquired fears. And these are things that we've learned, we've developed a phobia towards, even though there's no biological reason why we should be afraid of them. The acquired fear that's seen the biggest increase in recent years is called coulrophobia, and that's a fear of clowns. The highest grossing horror film of all time is It, which was released this year. And that's at least partly to blame, probably, for this massive increase in a fear of clowns. And the reason is because we've learned to associate something that was once quite harmless and something to go and see for a joyous day out with a really quite threatening outcome. So Pennywise, the clown in It, eats children, which really links into our fear of dying. One of the reasons why fears can spread so rapidly through populations is because of something called emotional contagion. And that's basically this drive that humans seem to have as social animals to copy other people's behaviour and mimic their responses. And that's something we saw quite widely in the UK in 2016 in what's been called the clown apocalypse. So there was a spate of people who were dressing up as clowns, and it eventually led to people who didn't previously have a clown phobia ending up developing one just through watching other people's reactions. We get this mass hysteria, this spread of fear. So this emotional contagion, the spread of fear and of other emotions, is something that I'm looking at in my own research, specifically in children and adults who are on the autism spectrum. And what we tend to find is that fear and other emotions don't spread as widely in people who are on the autism spectrum. They just don't seem to catch and copy the fear response in the way that typical people do. There are two techniques that we can use in psychology to try and alleviate these fears. The first technique is perhaps the most extreme, and it's known as flooding. And it is basically where you're forced to confront the worst case scenario. So for example, if you had a fear of clowns, you might be put into a room with a large number of clowns, and the idea behind it is that eventually, although you might be massively anxious at first, you learn that no harm's going to come of you, and your anxiety naturally has to subside. The second technique is known as systematic desensitization, and this is where you work with a psychologist to build up your ability to tolerate whatever you're scared of. For example, if you were afraid of spiders, you might start by being asked to read about spiders, then to look at a picture of a spider, then perhaps to be in a room where you can see a spider outside where it can't get to you. And then you gradually build this up until eventually you get to the stage where you can handle a spider without getting this fear response. So again, it's about learning to break these associations you have between a spider and something bad happening to you.